Shot. Morning TV world. All right. Carte blanche. And then, who can I transfer? Huh? Who wants to go? Huh? I just think you can get a lacquer position there. What? Maybe get yourself a BM X4. No? What you got to understand, and I keep repeating myself here, you know, gents, we're sitting in a very difficult position in terms of dealing with people with our types of issues. Because on the one hand, okay, you have what you saw last night on television, which I insisted people watch. But I've insisted that you watch it from a different angle, mentally, intellectually, if I can put it that way, right? So you got that situation, right, as you saw last night, right? Then on the other side of the coin, you've got 4 addicts that have just been arrested for giving a 4-year-old child a Mandrax pipe to smoke. On the other hand, you've got a bunch of crystal methamphetamine addicts that have sold, how old was Jocelyn? 2, 3, 4, 5, that have sold a little girl, a toddler, for 20,000 Rand, and as was mentioned in court, for money to buy more crystal methamphetamine. So you've got these two situations, these two sides of the coin, all right? And then on the other, you've got a third side to this two-sided coin, all right, where you've got a person who is, generally speaking, a decent human being, all right, who has fallen into the trap of addiction, who is seeking some kind of help out of this nightmare, right? And so you've got to navigate and negotiate this entire thing, because what a lot of people, and I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but it's okay, because, you know, I'm here to talk truth, right? What a lot of people don't understand, all right, is the level of criminality that is involved in addiction. Particularly, you know, you get a guy, right, he's working somewhere, he's got a relatively good job, and he's been partying on the weekends, and he's been blasting a bit of coke and dropping some pills, and you know, and then of course the problem gets a little bit more serious, where now he's taking coke to work and he's blasting at work, and you know, it's starting to affect his work, and his work picks it up, and they do a drug test and they test him positive, and then they've got 2 options. They can either fire the guy, or they can try and help him, and then they try help him. He submits to the help because he doesn't really want to live like that. He enjoys his job, he enjoys his lifestyle, he doesn't want to be an addict. And he goes to rehab and he starts trying to get his things together, right? You got that guy. But that guy, 9 times out of 10, you know, first of all, when he gets caught the first time, doesn't feel that he's got any kind of a problem, gets angry with his employer, gets fired, and then, you know, ends up unemployed, still with a drug problem, and has to, you know how the addiction works. The addiction just wants drugs, and it doesn't care how it gets them. Can't stop, needs money to continue in his addiction, still doesn't understand that he's got an addiction, you know, because that's how your brain cons you. You get conned. You get completely conned into believing that it's not the drugs that's the problem, or whatever led to the drugs that's the problem. Generally, it's the drugs that's the problem. You know, all the pseudoscience and psychology and all of that behind why you become an addict. You know, I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to talk for any one of you, right? I also went through stuff in my youth that I didn't understand was stuff until I started working on that stuff. But I could only start working on that stuff once I got off the drugs, right? Now, I didn't get on drugs to try and mask, hide, kill pain per se. That wasn't my reason. It might have been subconsciously what my brain identified as something that could dull, things that had happened to me in my youth. But I didn't start for those reasons. I started drugs because I was hanging around with a certain group of people. Those folks were all using drugs and convinced me that all the stuff that I'd ever heard about drugs was untrue. Look at them. And, when you looked at them, drugs looked like quite something to be involved in, particularly when combined with the media that's available. Even at my time, in the movies, all the oaks with money were doing drugs, all the oaks with lack of cars were doing drugs. And in my real life, the same thing was true. The oaks that were doing the drugs all had lack of cars, were all moving with the hottest of the hot chicks, were all, when you went to the clubs, were the oaks that got in for free, that went to the VIP sections. They were the guys, they were the boys, And, that lifestyle appealed to me. And then I tried drugs, I didn't try Zol because of that. I tried Zol for a different reason. Zol was given to me on my first night in the police as an initiation, you know what I mean? And I hated it. But then I started smoking a bit of weed with these oaks, and then, I got to know them better, and then the trust relationship started, and the friendship started. And then one day a guy gave me LSD, and I tried LSD, and I flipped and loved it. But I'm not going to lie. I flipped and loved it. He gave me a cap that was called a strawberry, right? And I took half a cap, and I flipped and loved it. But, and then I used to take that every weekend. In fact, it got to a point where if I didn't have trips, I wouldn't go jail. As simple as that, or, I'd go jail, but not jail, you know what I mean? I'd go sit somewhere and drink, you know what I mean? But, and then, I'd tune me, try some pillar, Mandrax, and I tried that, and I flipped and loved it, but loved it even more, and I smoked pillar for quite some time. Still taking caps, still smoking weed, still drinking, but now also smoking buttons, right? And then one day someone offered me this thing I'd never seen before, I'd hardly even, I touched cocaine once before that. Someone made me a little joint with some cocaine in it. Didn't do much, you know what I mean? I was fascinated, but it didn't do much because I'd seen this cocaine in the movies, And then one day I found some cocaine and I took it somewhere to sell it, to make some bucks. And the person there cooked a rock. And I smoked that. And let me tell you something. I'll be dead honest. It felt like I'd arrived where I'd always wanted to be. You know what I mean? It was unbelievably good. And I kept trying. I kept doing it because I really enjoyed that feeling. I enjoyed the way it made me feel. I enjoyed the rush. I enjoyed everything about it. I enjoyed everything, the whole ritual behind it. But then I found that all of a sudden, out of the blue, I was committing crimes. I didn't relate that to the drug abuse. And then I got kicked out of the police for a very serious crime. I didn't associate that with the drug abuse. I associated all of that with, people have just got a problem with me. Everyone hates me, blaming the world for my situation. You know what I mean? And I found, and I carried on living like this for years. Many times didn't have food, many times couldn't pay my rent, many times. And I never in my own mind associated my downward spiral. In fact, I didn't even see it as a downward spiral. I just saw it as life happening to me. You know what I mean? And I never gave drugs the blame for that. Ever. Ever. People used to tell me, this is your problem, you need to stop. And I was like, nah, can stop anytime. And why would I want to stop? I smoke it. I smoke this lifestyle. I smoke committing crime. I smoke not having people tell me what to do. I smoke getting up when I want to. I dig it. But at the same time, didn't have a car, hardly had clothes, if I did have something like in my house, like a TV or a hi-fi, because back then we used to have hi-fi systems or whatever it was, those things would be there for days and then they'd be gone. And then, the next time we pull a move, you know what I mean? I'd get some money and then I'd go either get them back from the pawn shop or I'd buy new stuff, I never forget. We'd go pull a move, then we'd go to Cresta, right? And we'd have money. And we say, right, this time we're not going to go smoke rocks. And we'd go to the shop, buy a lacquer watch, buy some clothes, because we'd have quite a bit of bucks. And then, after that, we'd be sitting at the coffee shop. Now we've got all our packets of stuff there, and we still got thousands and thousands of rands. And back then, thousands of rands was worth thousands of rands, If you had 10, 15 grand, you had money. And the equivalent of having 150K now. You know what I mean? And then we'd be sitting there scheming, now what? All right, well, let's fly home, let's drop this stuff off, and then we check what happens. Because now we're bored. We've pulled the move, we've got the shit. Now it's 4 in the afternoon, now what? We don't need to work tomorrow or the next day because we've got enough bucks. What are we going to do? And then we'll be sitting there and then it'll be like, let's just go get one, or let's go get 5, or let's go get a couple of rocks and a couple of pills so that we don't carry on smoking rocks the whole night, right? Then we'll go to the Mert in Hilbra. The oak knows who we are. He'll take us into a room. He'll tune and we'll tune sweet, and then we want to go, and then he tunes, nah, man, just hit this while you wait for the rest, Then we hit that, and then 3 days later we come out of there and we flat broke again. Now the watch that we just bought is pawned, and my word, fact. You know what I mean? And, everyone is looking for us, and everyone's mooring with us, and we're like, nah, stuff you, Oaks, blah, blah. Catch a couple hours sleep or a day's sleep, and then back on the move. Steal again, thick with money again, exactly the same process again. And I thought that was the way to live. I thought there's nothing wrong with that. Nowhere in my mind did I ever have the idea that I'm taking drugs to kill past pain and trauma and all this type of stuff that they're now saying that is the reason why we do it, And what I found is that when I stopped the drugs, most of the pain that I had to deal with after stopping the drugs was pain that had accumulated due to taking drugs. The rest may have played a role, but it really played a very small role. If there's one thing I can say that really played a role in my mindset, it would be, if I could put a clinical term on it, the post-traumatic stress disorder that I picked up in the police. That would be the only thing that I can really say, okay, that could definitely be and could have been a trigger. Because I looked around me and the cops that were all around me were either committing suicide, complete and utter alcoholics, or drug addicts. There's very few guys that were with me in the police, all right? And I'm going to say this, that were at the same level of intensity of police work that we were at, all right? Which was ridiculous, actually, all right? That are actually still alive today. Most of them are dead, bro. They've either killed themselves, drank themselves to death, drugged themselves to death, or have had heart attacks and strokes. You with me? But I found when I stopped the drugs, and this is my contention, where I have a contention with clinical mainstream thinking, all right, is that I found when I took the drugs out of the equation, the substance itself, all right, my life improved. My life improved immediately. You might be sitting in rehab now thinking my life hasn't improved, but your life has improved, bro. I promise you. If you've been here 2 days, you clean 2 days, your life has improved. If you've been taking drugs for years and years and years, you must understand you haven't eaten properly, you haven't slept properly, you haven't functioned properly for years. You've been here 2 days, you clean 2 days, you've eaten properly for 2 days, your brain has been clean of drugs for 2 days, your life has improved. Yes, you might be separated from the things that you enjoy outside of drugs because you are in a closed, secure environment. But that will change. That comes with time. And that time is coming. None of you are here for life sentences. you're here on a drug rehabilitation program. And that drug rehabilitation program will come to an end. And then hopefully you'll go into some kind of reintegration program, hopefully led by us and our counselors here, to keep you on the straight and narrow, to then help you work through the life issues that you're battling to deal with. Things like challenges that come your way, things like emotional problems that you battle to deal with. You don't know how to function, you're emotionally immature. You know, I met the guy the other day. This guy's 50. And his thinking is the thinking of a 20-year-old. Because he's been taking drugs since he was 20. And he's still throwing tantrums like a 20-year-old. He's still facing any kind of obstacle that comes before him like a 20-year-old would face that obstacle. Not like a 50-year-old man would face that obstacle. You know, shouting, screaming, throwing toys. That's not how adults face problems, but, you know, does that mean adults never get angry and never shout and never scream? No. Everyone has those moments. But when every single problem that you face, you either escape through drugs or you throw tantrums until you get what you want, is not adult thinking. You know? Because ultimately, the people that you're throwing the tantrums at will move out of your life. And you'll be isolated and alone. And then the only thing you've got left, if you're still using, all right, is to blame. Blame, 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 blame. And that's childish behavior. You know? Where did I see it? I saw something this weekend. It was on TV, I'm sure. Yeah. I'll tell you where it was. They've got this thing on TikTok. It's called TikTok box, of Tick box. My bird. And you got these oaks, all right? It's like the Jerry Springer show, brother. Right? You got these oaks that are all fluking each other on TikTok, right? And I want to say this. Mainly Afrikaners. Right? So they have this event now where these oaks can go and bliksem each other, right? Right? You must watch it with TikBox. TikBox 7. They're already on 7 now, but TikBox 7. My butt. Now I'm watching these oaks roll and I'm thinking to myself, I wish a pro fighter would go there. Just for a laugh. You know what I mean? And just like, I don't know, go under a false name, get in that boxing ring and show them actually what it's about, you know? Because it's windmills and... Anyway, there's these two oaks, right? They hate each other from TikTok. And the one oak feels like he's winning, but halfway through the fight, he throws a tantrum in the middle of the boxing ring. Oak's name is Troubles. This oak throw a full-on vloermuur. Takes off his hat, his flippin' safety hat, throws his... goois a tantrum, storms out of the ring. And people cheating him, hey, bro. And then afterwards, he's got a now TikTok video about, you know, why life is so bad for him now, about this. And I looked at it and I thought, that is exactly it, bro. That is exactly it. This is what we're dealing with in addiction. You know, I watched another podcaster the other day and he says it. He says it very clearly. We're dealing with adult juveniles. Man. We're dealing with, this guy said it, and he was talking particularly about overprotective mothers, right? In South Africa. Who are constantly, there's this guy that, I'll tell you what it is, he's a colored guy, he's a tattoo artist, and he started his podcast because oaks owe him money for tattoos, right? And now the oaks are rattling because he's just doxing them straight out everywhere, right? And I'm behind this oak 100%. You know, I'm actually proud of him for having the balls to do it, right? And then he goes into this thing about how now he's doxed this one oak. This oak owes him 25 grand for chops put, all right? And the next thing, this oak's mother phones him. Yeah, I'm phoning about my son thing and what you put on TikTok and Facebook. And the oak explains the situation. It's now, then the mother now makes an arrangement to now pay off his debt. And this guy says, you know what, as much as I need the money, I don't know if I want to accept the money from his mom. Because it's this type of behavior. By the way, the guy that owes the money is 40 years old. And he says this is what creates this behavior of these men, all right? And he says it like this, right? I must actually show you, it's a TikTok video. It's flipping brilliant, right? He says this creates, because he's now, left home, he's got kids, he's got a tattoo business, that's what he does, right? He says they create these men that latch on to women and that wait for the woman to go to work and the woman to get paid so that when the woman comes and gets paid, they can take the woman to the ATM and withdraw all her money out of the ATM. Making this woman believe that they're the flipping rock star of rock stars. And actually, they adult juveniles. They've never been allowed to become men by their parents. Right? And I'm sure he's going to catch a lot of heat for those statements. But he must know that I'm behind him with those statements because I deal with it here every day. I've got a bunch of guys here that really, through drugs, have found a way to escape all responsibility for life. So we have the excuses of life for the reason we take drugs, all right? And then we blame and we use drugs for the reasons of not engaging in life. And then when life hits us, then we go back to the drugs and we blame the life that has hit us for taking the drugs. And then we evade those responsibilities because, how do you expect me to do this? I've got a drug problem. And at some point, you're going to have to put a stop to that thinking and that behavior. Otherwise, and this is where my whole point is going, institutions like that institution that you watched on television last night will never come to an end. And I'll tell you why they'll never come to an end. All right? Because you have primarily, number one, no one believes you anymore. No one believes you. So things could be happening to you that are wrong. You could be being abused in many different scenarios and in serious issues where things are happening to you, all right, that are not right. Your rights are being removed from you, all right, across many different. Let's start with the cops. You're an addict, right? The cop that got into the van got told by his commander, if you don't make drug arrests today, there's going to be problems. You're going to get disciplinary or whatever the case may be. His commander is looking at the stats and he's not happy with what his cops are doing at that moment at that police station. And he says to his cops, you guys better bring me 10 flipping drug arrests today. Otherwise, you're going to work until you bring me 10. I don't care if you work for 4 days non-stop. You're going to bring me 10 drug arrests. The sooner you bring me those 10 drug arrests, the sooner you can go home. Right? And the cop, it's Friday. He's got a party planned with his mates. Bafana are playing someone here at FNB. He's made an arrangement with his Chinas. They're going to go watch the football at FNB. But now his commander's tune, if you don't bring me 10 drug arrests, guess what, China? No soccer for you. You're working the whole weekend. Or get me the 10 drug arrests before the soccer starts, right? That guy gets in his police car. He comes out. Yeah, you with your flippin' hoodie. You actually love this thing. Yeah, you trapping with your hoodie, your dirty tracksuit pants, all right, that you haven't washed in 3 weeks because you're on drugs, you're too lazy, right? And you're sliping there down the road, looking for a plan, a hustle to go get some drugs. You got no drugs on you, but you're on the prowl. And this cop drives past and he just happens to have 5 bags of crystal in his car from when what? Just as, they call it a bag when we were in the cops. You just keep a bag, in case of these types of situations. I'm telling the truth. And the cop checks you. He's got this bag of crystal there. He screams, wait, here's my first drug arrest. He stops, he skits you. He's got the bag in his hand. He skits you, puts his hand in your pocket, pulls his hand out. What's this? You know that you didn't have drugs on you, but like you know. Your mom knows you're an addict. Your dad knows you're an addict. The cop can see you're an addict. And you're saying it's not mine. What does every addict say on earth? It turns you under arrest. One down, none to go. What? And because your entire life is based on lies, you guys stand in front of the prosecutor. Tonight, sir, the cop planted it. Yeah, of course. Sure. Sure, Captain. Sorry for the word, but let's be real. Sure, Captain Junkie, the cop planted it on you. Have you ever seen this cop before in your life? No. Have you got some kind of relationship with him that he doesn't smoke you? No. So why would he plant it on you? It's extra work for him. Doesn't make sense. But you don't know what happened in the office before that cop bumped you. But because you, through your behaviors, have eliminated your right. What? And how are you going to prove that's not yours? It's that policeman, it's his partner versus you. Do you understand where I'm coming? Now they say, all right, we're sending you on a criminal diversion. We're going to get you help, brother. You clearly need help. Because now they've spoken to your mom. Your mom came rushing to the police station, with 5 bags of KFC and everything that you now need. Mommy's come to save you, right? And the cops chew, no. He's blooming here until he goes to court, right? Then you get to court, and by the time you come into the court, your mom's already been there to the prosecutor, and some out from a rehab is there. And they tune, all right, they're going to send you rather to rehab. You don't want to go back to the cells, Eugene, sweet, whatever. It's not my stuff, but I'll go. Right? I don't want to go back to jail. Right? Sweet. Now you end up in a jail like that. I know places blue. Because people have been phoning me a lot since this is broken. This story. It's been going on for months, this thing that you folks watched last night. Months this has been going on. This is just like the top of the cake now, right? This carte blanche story is just the cherry on the cake. There's a lot more that I didn't even mention on carte blanche that is in the public domain. Hectic stuff. Not more hectic than an oak dying, but very hectic, right? Now you end up there, right? And those things are happening to you, but you're being starved. Every time you open your mouth, 3-4 oaks are flipping, beating the cuck out of you. Right? And all this stuff. And now you get your phone call, or if you get your phone call, you eventually get your phone call, and you get on the phone and you tune your parents, listen here. This is what's happening to me. And your parents are like, all right. They find the center, they tune the center, what's the story? The center's got a standard line. I've been in centers like that. He's manipulating you, he's trying to get out, da-da-da-da-da. Parents look at your track record versus what the rehab is telling them, who they're going to believe. They're going to believe the center. That's why people like me have a very high onus of integrity and morality that we have to either keep within ourselves, or we need some kind of very strong accountability around us. You understand what I'm saying? You got to have someone overlooking you. Especially if you're a person that is dodgy to start with. But you will never admit that you're a person that's dodgy to start with, right? I agree. You understand what I'm saying? So now, these types of things are happening, let's say, and you're trying to tell the truth, but because of your lifestyle and the things that you believe, you've removed your voice, you've removed your rights, because no one is going to believe you. And that's a very, very dangerous place. You know, if that situation that you Oaks watched last night had to have happened in any other type of institution, a children's home, an old age home, a psychiatric hospital, which I know these things are also happening in certain psychiatric hospitals, right? I know of, I can't prove any of them, but I hear stories coming. A guy said to me last night, in fact, a guy phoned me, also he runs a massive, registered, proper recovery center, right? And he phoned me last night, he tunes here, and now, check this, I tune here. I said, I don't know where this oak learned this stuff. You know what I mean? Because that oak was here on the program. And I said, because that stuff that he's doing there, I don't know where he got it from. Because I promise you, the last time I saw stuff like that being done was in 2003, 2004, down in the Northern Cape. And then I heard about other places around that these types of things that were happening. Now, that individual, after he left the program, yeah, he went and worked for one of those places for about 18 months, right? And then he went and opened this place that you saw last night, right? So this oak said to me, now, my bro, what you're seeing there is the tip of the iceberg. He says, in Pretoria, there's a center that I got called to because the oak wanted to sell that center. So I went to go have a look because I was thinking about expanding at that time. I've changed my mind since then, he says. And he says, when I walked into that center, the oak showed me they've got a cell there, like a holding cell, with a concrete floor, a steel gate, and there was an oak sitting in there, only with a Bible and a 2-liter bottle of water, all right, in his underjocks. No mattress, no blanket, no nothing, right? With only Joyce Meyer allowed to be listened to 24/7. And apparently he sits in that place for 21 days. Imagine. Now, I know the place that he's talking about because there's a lot of stories that have come out of there as well. And it's very difficult to discern because there's even stories that have come out of here. I told you oaks last week, we've got a dungeon here where we hang oaks and we electrocute them. So, you know, you got to be able to discern now, and this is where the difficulty comes in, is discerning which person is really going through this type of abuse and which person is making up stories of abuse to get back to the drugs. And this is the place where people have to, that you speak to on the outside or whoever you speak to, have to make a call. And then they weigh up what you're saying versus what you said in the past and versus the trauma they've gone through with your addiction. And then they've got to make a decision on what do they believe to be true. And generally speaking, you're going to end up on the losing side of that equation because of the way you've lived your life up until now. Now, if you want to stop that from happening, it's a very simple fix, but it truly is a simple fix. It seems like it's a difficult fix, and the process to get to the simple fix is quite a process. But the fix is easy, right? Are you ready for it? Here's the key. Don't pick it up, but I've yet to see an oak take drugs that didn't pick it up. Are you hearing me? If you want to eliminate more than half of your problems in life, just get off the shit. Half your problems will evaporate. And the other half of your problems will be the problems that the rest of us deal with every day anyway. The problems of earning a living, raising children, paying our rent, day-to-day cut, dealing with SARS and Eskom and, whatever you have to deal with on a daily basis, which is just normal life, sickness. You know what I mean? Like my mate, he's been running a company for 30 years. Very, 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 very successful company. One day I came to work, he's got an account for working capital, right? That they keep that account for working capital because they got to pay sometimes large invoices to suppliers, right? Some of that invoices are like 300 grand, blah, blah, blah. And he just paid a whole lot of invoices and he had 800 grand in his account, working capital, right? Day to day, right? Came to work, wanted to pay another invoice, went on to his banking, boom, 8.50 in his account. Zero working capital, no liquid, bro. Right? Now I'm talking 20 years ago, right? 800 grand. It's big ammo, but all right. Check says an entry, bro. South African Revenue Services, back taxes, 800 Gs. They just went into his account, took 800 grand out of his account. Got his accountant, because now the accountant's supposed to be on top of the stuff. Choose what's going on here, bro. Aren't you paying our tax? Where's the money? Accountant comes, checks it out. SARS made a clerical error. Right? Clerical error. Took him 4 years to get that 800 grand back on a clerical error. He had to go and borrow money. He had to put an overdraft in place so that he could carry on operating. And then had to pay the lawyers and pay everyone to get that money back. He never got the money back that he had to pay all the accountants and lawyers to get the money back. He got his money back with 4 years interest. That was it. And they taxed him on giving it back as income. That's the type of cuck you're going to have to learn how to deal with. You get in your car, you've just bought a car, you're out of rehab, things are going well, you're on your way to graft, someone rides into the back of you, crunch, right? We always say a taxi because it's generally taxis, right? Boom. You get out the car, it gives you his details, blah, blah. You get hold of your insurance changes you. No, sir, your debit order bounced. Didn't you notice yesterday? At the time of the accident, you were uninsured. Wow. Happens, what? But it's the taxi driver's fault. Now you're trying to find the taxi driver. There's no such taxi driver. Fake ID, fake number plates, fake license. You know how it goes. We live in South Africa, bro. Now you got a 30, 40 grand bill here from the panel beaters to fix your car. You have to have your car because you can't get to work without your car. You come to some arrangement, you go lend money from the bank, you speak to the panel shop, whatever. Or your insurance comes along and says, look, all right, we're prepared to pay it, but your excess is going to be 9 grand. You know what I mean? Those types of things, that's life. It's shit that you'll always have to deal with. But all the baggage that comes with taking drugs, the police, the fighting, the flipping no cash, the this, the that, the relationship issues, that'll all go. And if you do have issues, emotional, mental issues that you're battling with, traumas that you have to deal with from your past or whatever, that's when you can deal with it. When you're thinking clearly, when you can work through those processes, when you can understand that person's role, your role, why it happened to you, what happened to you, and you can start working through those issues. You understand? And even that will improve. So the key is, don't pick it up. No matter how cross you get, I've got a mate, bro, a couple weeks ago, the bloke finds out that his missus and a friend of his in church are having an affair. I also saw a recovering addict. You know what I mean? Now he had a choice there, bro. Because he's been working hard, moving his life forward, and now he gets slapped with this. You know? Now he's got a choice. Am I going to deal with this head on, or am I going to now use this as an excuse to go and relapse? What an excuse, but if there's ever been an excuse, that's an excuse, my bro. You know, I would have to think twice about not using that out for a quick little jaw, you know, which will last 2 years and cost me everything I've worked for. You know what I mean? But it's a good excuse. You know? Now he's made the choice to deal with this thing like an adult. You know, doing the adult things, working through it as an adult and not picking up the drugs. And that's true growth. That's true recovery. You know? And hanging on to his faith in God, even though this happened in a place of faith. Understanding that people are not God. People make choices. And dealing with that emotion, you know, the emotional backlash of that happening to you. But he's coping with it. He's dealing with it. Why? Because he's grown up. In the years and years he's been clean. He's grown up. He's become emotionally mature. He's understood how life works. He's understood how to deal with the problems. And fortunately, listen to these words. Up to this point, he's had various other challenges and problems in his life that he's had to deal with, that he's overcome through the years. And so when he got hit with this massive thing, he's reverted back to the adult way of dealing things, which he learned through all the other problems that he worked through. You with me? But he's never picked the shit up again. Why? Because he's not an addict, and because he's a working guy, and because he's trustworthy and honest and moral, no one is even prepared to listen to a story from the soon-to-be ex-missus, because of the way that he conducted him. If this same thing had happened when he was an addict, what would people have said? You deserve it. You're a rubbish. You treat her like cuck. You never at home. You're always out with your mates. You're always high on drugs in the street. What did you expect her to do? It's your fault, but his voice would have been gone, no matter what, because of drug addiction. With your addiction, you have made yourself a non-entity. Now, what I said just now, if this had happened in any other kind of institution, the explosion would have been 100 million times more than what we've seen here. You know, only people that are posting in the comments are people that have got addicts in their lives. No one else in South Africa gives a shit, I promise you. I haven't had one message to my DMs, one message, not one. I've had one, right in the beginning when this whole story started breaking. I got a message from a well-known PR whose brother-in-law was on the program. He tuned, have you seen this cuck? I was like, whoa. He's actually the first one to show it to me. That's it. We haven't had a peep from anyone. What? Because let me tell you, as much as you sit here and me dealing with you now, you are human beings. You have feelings. You have aspirations. You have these things that you want in your life. You know, you people like any other people, but you people with an addiction problem, right? The rest of the country, the rest of the world sees these programs on TV. Junkies sitting on the street, shooting up, flipping, turning city blocks into flipping, cesspools, looting, breaking in. giving children drugs to smoke, selling children, murdering children, sexually abusing children. This is how they see addicts every day of their lives. So when an addict dies as a result of abuse in an institution, everybody goes, oh, that's terrible. People in addiction, parents of addicts say that. But I promise you, I've been around some people since this thing started breaking that are not addicts. And you don't want to hear what they have to say. You want me to tell you? Huh? You want me to tell you? You were there on the one. Good riddance. Send more of them there. We shouldn't even have rehabs. Lock them up. I'm telling you, bro. This is what you don't want to hear. I don't want to hear it. Because the reality is if those things were said about me and implemented, I'd be in jail for the rest of my life, bro. For the crimes I committed as an addict. I never killed anyone. I never raped anyone. But I was an arch thief, but if it wasn't tied down, comes worth. I'll give you an example. My mates were busy with having a fight in a parking lot outside a nightclub one night. And while they were rolling, I checked the out that they were rolling against, had left his car open and his deck was in the car. So while they were busy rolling the oak, I went and gripped his radio. And then he was crying about his radio after he got a hard-in, and my mates made me give him back his radio because he got a hard-in. Shame. Can't steal the oak's radio while we're moving the oak, but. And my answer was like, I thought that's why we were moving the oak. Telling you, that's how I was. That's the type of person I was. Right? And a person like that deserves to go to jail. But fortunately for me, God is real. God has grace. God saw fit to give me a second and a third and a fourth chance. You know, I tell my guys here all the time, the oaks that are now working here, that have been here for long, right? I tell them, always remember, no matter how much kaka oak is giving you here, right? First of all, that oak is you a couple years ago. You were the same. Don't ever look down at these oaks. Don't ever think that you're better than them. You're further along the path of recovery than them, but you're no better than them, bro, because you're only one decision away from being that oak again. That's how I think. I can tell you, I didn't always think like that. I developed a major superiority complex in my recovery, and God chopped me off at the ankles, took me straight back there just for a little taste, and brought me back in here on my hands and knees, but. And that event changed my thinking forever, but. Forever. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me and the best thing that ever happened to me, outside of other best things that have happened to me in my recovery, that I also viewed as very bad things at the time. Going to jail for 6 months, waiting trial. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me. But how cuck was it? My mate, for anyone who's ever been in prison, you know how cuck that place is. But let me tune you. There was a paradigm shift in my mind in that place. Relapse, it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. It can lead to your death. Can lead to you losing everything that you worked for up to that point. But for me, as bad as it was, one of the best things that ever happened to me. Understanding that you're better than nobody, bro. You're only one choice away from being back down where those oaks that you think you're a king over are right now. You're not a king over them, bro. You're supposed to be guiding them down the path that you've walked already. That's the one thing. I also tell my guys here, if a guy is truly out of hand and unflippant controllable, it's a very simple fix. We send him back to the streets. The only place that will humble an addict enough to come to a place of change is enough time on the streets. The streets will humble you, but eventually. One of two things. They'll humble you or they'll kill you. If you don't get humbled, you'll end up in the mortuary. It's as simple as that. Right? And that's it. Do you really want to be those 4 oaks that are sitting there now facing murder charges, bro? Because another addict, same as you, doesn't want to come to the same place you at right now. Your job is to pull him up. If he doesn't want to be pulled up, don't get pulled down. Don't get pulled down to that level. If an oak wants to destroy his life, don't allow him to destroy your life with his life. We send him back to the streets. We send him back to his addiction. Let his addiction work him properly. Because he can't take his addiction to court. He can't fight his addiction and blame his addiction for... You can blame it, but ultimately he can't. There's no legal recourse against his addiction that is smashing him up far worse than anything else has ever smashed him up. You can never. I've been in fighting my whole life. I've been rolling my whole life. You know? And I can tell you this now. Nothing ever tramped me harder than my addiction. Nothing, but no clap I ever received, no hiding I ever got on the street, no stabbing, no gun, no nothing. Ever hammered me as hard as my addiction hammered me. Because it was long, continuous, and relentless. And that's what will bring her out to his senses, bro. Enough time, enough pain, you know? And that's where he got it wrong. Yes, pain is a catalyst for change. But not for us as the rehab to inflict so much pain that the oak now, you know, is broken worse than he was broken when he arrived. The pain that we speak of is the pain of the addiction. An addict will only change when his addiction becomes more painful than reality. And that's what the streets will do to someone. All right. So, I still haven't got to disrespecting your parents. But I knew we were going to end up dealing, or I was going to end up dealing with this thing. But you got to understand, yeah, also, if you are oak, you know, I heard yesterday on that show, I watched, yeah, apparently the oaks are running the number in there and all of that. We're not going to tolerate that. You want to run the number, then go to the place where they do number. Go back to the streets, go back to the gangs, go to prison. Go run number as much as you want in prison. This is not a place for that. And if you're going to be an oak that's going to try to pull those types of moves, of trying to get that whole thing going, yeah, it's very simple. You're going to be out the gate. I'm not desperate for cash. Even though I don't have cash, I'm not desperate for cash. You're not here because I'm desperate for cash. You're not here because I'm trying to get rich. If I want to get rich, I'll turn this into a clinic tomorrow. I'll be rich within 5 years. I'm here to try and help you change. And if you don't want to help me help you change, then go back to your addiction and come back to me when you want to change. And then I'll help you. And my guys will help you. If you're a guy that's going to start assaulting other people, yeah, we're going to contain you and we're going to get rid of you. We're going to find the police. That's where he made his biggest mistake. You know that, eh? And we don't operate like that on any level. When that oak ducked, what do we do? What is our protocol here when our oak absconds? But we hit the panic. They come. We report it to them. That's why I tell you, oaks. I tell the staff. Don't come and chew me oak has run away 3 hours ago. It's already too long. We must know. That's why we do as many roll calls as we do. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that if you do decide to do the stupid thing and not the manly thing, because only a man will come to the office and tune, this is it, speak to my family, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, we're in agreement, I'm leaving, pack your bags, and you go. Like a grown-up adult. Jumping over walls and running away. That's what 13-year-olds do, what? When they're running away from boarding school, what? And if your family or whoever says to you, listen, yeah, stick it out, then you must stick it out. You must be a man. You must finish what you committed to. But if you do go like that, jump the wall, run away, we call the security, and I'm telling the oaks, yeah, immediately we get hold of the family. Not hours later. That's why I don't understand, just on a personal note here with us here at the center, how you guys do roll call, and then you're halfway through the roll call and I check oaks still coming to line up. How do you do that? How are you going to know if our oak is missing? Because his China said, no, it's just in the toilet. How do you know that he hasn't convinced his China to cover for him for 20 minutes while he palegas? Because when you get the China and say, but you said the oak was there, he says, yeah, but then the China covers for himself. He says, but the oak said he was just going to the toilet. That's what I was telling you. Meanwhile, there was a plan already. That's why. When you do roll call, everyone is at roll call, you do the roll call. Not drips and drabs and all of that. And that's where the staff and the SRs, that's your job, bro. Just to monitor and make sure the oaks are where they need to be. That's it. So we can, if a situation like that happens, we can immediately get all of the family, immediately get the security on it. And the security do, they drive around and check if they can see the oak. And they do nothing if they see the oak. That's what you got to understand. We're just trying to protect ourselves from your stupid actions. They'll find you, they'll stop next to you, they'll say, listen here, what's the story? Okay, just hold on. They'll get on the radio to their control room. The control room will phone us, they'll tune us, the oak is here and here and here. And we'll say, all right, we're going to send 2 oaks to try and speak to the oak. If we get there and speak to you and you're adamant you want to vie, we'll do with you like we did with Mark. We'll bring you back here, pack your stuff, be on your way. What? It's not a prison, brother. It's a rehab. Unless you're on a court order or a criminal diversion, you must make the decision based on what you and your family have decided to do. We will try and counsel you to do the right thing. You don't want to do it, brother? Hey, at the end of the day, you must live with your choice. But always remember, you made the decision. When you find yourself in a prison cell, when you find yourself living on the street, when you find yourself no wife, no kids, no money, no job, always remember that decision. That's why I say to my guys, we don't chase after them. We don't drag them back here. Because then you become the target of the problem. They must make the decision. They must vie. They must deal with the consequences, because then they must understand that they made that decision, and that decision is what has taken them to where they are now. Every decision you make every day takes you to the next decision. And if you make one bad decision, chances are you now have to make the next decision to try and fix the bad decision. And 90% of the time, that decision is also going to be bad. So one bad decision leads to another bad decision, leads to another bad decision in the kaka game. And the same with good choices. Good choice leads you to a good choice, leads you to a good choice, and your life grows. Every now and then you step on a landmine, make a bad one, but at least you're in the sound mind. Okay.